Hello, and welcome to episode 14 of Arbiter of Worlds. If you're new to the channel, this episode is part of a series on the art and science of game mastering tabletop RPGs. If you're a returning subscriber, thanks for helping me defeat the YouTube dragon. Last episode, we talked about how to run long-term campaigns successfully. But there's one major aspect of that which I didn't cover. It's a topic so important, it's getting its own episode. And that topic is, of course, managing problems between your players. So we're going to step away from the world of your imagination and turn to a messier world. The world of problem players, personality conflicts, and social pitfalls. Once you start running RPGs, you will likely, sooner rather than later, see a shouting match develop. It could be between you and one of your players, but more likely it'll be between two of your players. If you're lucky, it'll be at least thinly veiled in character. And if you're not lucky, it will involve a messy breakup over when he cheated on her with the elf spell sword, or worse. Role-playing games can be emotionally charged. And unlike video games, there isn't the filter of a monitor and gamepad between us and the other player. What happens is in your face. As the GM of the game, you'll be the person who assembled the group. And one of the signs of a great game master is the ability to manage and control social problems within the group you've assembled. Even better is to prevent them from ever occurring. Now, as a GM, you already have a lot of responsibilities as a world builder, a storyteller, an adversary, a judge. It's not easy to also have to handle social problems among or with players. It is, nevertheless, your responsibility. Let's harken back to the analogy I used last episode of the RPG party as a sports team. You're the coach of the team, and if the quarterback and the shortstop are fighting, no one is going to score any baskets. So it's on you to get that team back together. You're also the umpire of every ball game, and if the running back and the pitcher are brawling on the ice, you need to put a stop to it. Okay? So let's dive in. Why do social problems arise in RPGs? Most of the time, social problems arise when one or more of the players is out of step with the overall social dynamic of the rest of the players. Now, what do I mean by social dynamic? And the social dynamic is the unwritten rules by which the players govern their interactions with each other. You can think of them as voluntarily accepted constraints on player agency. That's important, so let me say that again. Voluntarily accepted constraints on player agency. There's three basic social dynamics in which players can interact in a tabletop campaign: collective, competitive collective, and individualist. Each of these social styles has its own implicit rules that govern how the players behave towards each other. The collective play style is characterized by a one-for-all, all-for-one mentality. Each of the players subsumes his individual play into the greater good of the campaign. In a collective campaign, the implicit rules are: 1. Each player will create a character that fits into and gets along well with the collective. 2. Each player is entitled to a chance to enjoy the campaign simply by virtue of being a fellow player. And 3. The collective as a whole will democratically make major campaign decisions, and all the players will abide by them. Now, if you want to see a great example of collective play, watch the Grey Brotherhood actual play series that I've been running on this channel. The players in that series are real-life friends of 20 years who all attended West Point together, and they act with an almost organic unity that emphasizes the party as a whole. And that's the collective play style. The competitive collective play style might be summarized as: we're in this together, but I don't have to like it. In the competitive collective campaign, the group has implicitly agreed to the following. 1. No player will create a character that cannot fit into the collective, but they don't need to be friendly to each other. 2. No player is entitled to enjoy the campaign except by virtue of his character. And 3. The collective as a whole will democratically make major campaign decisions, and all the players will abide by them. Finally, the individualist playstyle might be summarized as all against all, or every man for himself. And here are the implicit rules. 1. Each player makes his own character and decisions and accepts the consequences. 2. No player will get angry out of game at another player for actions of their respective characters. And 3. Major campaign decisions will be made based solely on what the characters decide in the game. Now, sometimes the social dynamic simply evolves out of a particular rule set or campaign theme or out of years of playing with the same group. Other times the group agrees in advance, and options will vary widely as to which of these social dynamics is the best for your group. And not every game can support every type of play. But regardless of what your group's social dynamic ends up being, social problems occur when part of the group is out of sync with the whole. So what follows are some common examples of problems. First, let's talk about character death and replacement. If you've been following my advice regarding the agency theory of fun, then character death is bound to happen sooner or later. When character death occurs, it's your responsibility to introduce the player's new character into the game as quickly and seamlessly as possible. The classic way to handle this was to introduce the new character as a prisoner found left for dead in one of the next few rooms, often with a suspiciously similar class and name. It's quick and it works. Other times, it might be someone the party meets at a tavern, a new member assigned by a patron, and so on. Regardless of where the new PC comes from, sometimes the surviving characters decide not to let the new PC into the party. So what do? And the answer is, it totally depends on the social dynamic of your campaign. In a collective campaign, you would gently remind the players that new characters should expect to be readily admitted and probably given some gear and assistance to get into play swiftly. In most collective campaigns, the players have created heroic, good-intentioned characters, and so this isn't much of a stretch. But even if their characters are world-weary cynics with deep suspicions about the world, in a collective game, the players have agreed, as a voluntary limitation on their agency, to put the group ahead of the individual. And they've agreed that each player is entitled to participate. So the need to introduce and integrate their fellow players trumps the particulars of in-character behavior. And if the majority of the players have a problem with this, that's okay. It just means you don't have a collective campaign. Now, in a competitive cooperative campaign, you need to remind the players that the new character should expect to be admitted, but probably not warmly. The player can expect his new character to get lots of in-character questioning or wisecracks, a show-me-what-you-can-do attitude, but it should be a given that ultimately he will be admitted to the party and play will go on. In a true individualist campaign, you don't do anything. The new character had better hope he's been created with knowledge, skills, or other utility to his prospective comrades, as the players are not beholden by any social contract to be nice to him. It might turn out that the party refuses to take the new character along. In response, he might follow them to aid them and prove his worth by backstabbing during the next fight. Of course, if they fear backstabbing, they might kill their erstwhile comrade. Now, imagine that a player's old character has died and a new character has been introduced into the group. But unbeknownst to the party members, this new character holds a radically different alignment than his new comrades. And during the party's next battle, he ruthlessly betrays them, leading to the death of the entire party. "Why did you do that?" someone asks. "Well, that's what my character would do," says the traitor. And what do you do as a GM in this circumstance? Now, if this happens in a collective campaign, then there's been a violation of all of the implicit rules of the campaign. First, the player introduced a character who didn't fit into the collective. Second, by purposefully getting everyone killed, the player didn't respect the other player's rights to enjoy the game. And third, by purposefully causing the campaign to end, the player breached the agreement to democratically decide major campaign decisions. You should stop the game, pull the offending player aside, explain that his behavior is out of bounds for this campaign, and rewind. A continuously problematic player should just be ejected, voted off the island. Now, if this happens in a competitive collective campaign, there's still been a violation of the social dynamic because the player introduced a character who didn't fit into the collective and he purposefully caused the campaign to end unilaterally. But since the game is partly competitive, there's a strong argument that you ought not intervene with GM fiat. I think the best way to handle this situation is to have a quick player vote, either to rewind events or let them stand. I had this happen in one of my own campaigns. It was this competitive collective game, long running, plenty of in-game struggles for power between PCs. About 80 sessions into the game, one of the players lets me know he has to leave the campaign because he's moving to a new city. On his last session, the player decides to change to chaotic alignment, and he betrays the entire party during a major battle. He thought it would be funny, he'd get killed, go out with a bang, but it actually caused a total party wipe. And at first, he took the stance, well, that's what my character would do because he's turned to evil. But when he saw how upset everyone was, he got very apologetic and the player just felt terrible. But the other players were furious because it seemed to them that this was arbitrarily motivated by the out-of-game consideration that he was moving across the country. So I put it to a vote. I said, guys, you can accept that it happened and continue with the henchman, or you can rewind. And everyone voted unanimously to rewind, including the perpetrator of the problem. Okay, now if this happens in an individualist campaign, then it's possible that nothing wrong has happened. The party wasn't required to take in the new player character, and the characters aren't required to be nice to each other. As judge, your responsibility is to remind the betrayed players that this is the sort of game they're playing, and they agreed not to get angry out of game. However, it's also possible that the traitor has just gone out of his way to purposefully wreck the fun, not because of what his character would do, but to get back at the party that let him die. And resolving this can get complex. The general rule when addressing the solution to the "that's what my character would do" problem is that it doesn't matter whether the problematic behavior is actually what the character would do. Doesn't matter whether the player is a consummate role player playing a black-hearted villain or he's just a black-hearted villain. It doesn't matter. All that matters is whether it's a problem. In a collective campaign, there's an implicit agreement to create characters that are one for all for one. So if a player makes a character who's a sociopathic traitor, he has created the problem. If he purposefully chooses to roleplay a jerk when everyone else has agreed to roleplay nice people, that means he's choosing to be a jerk. And the better he is at roleplaying, the more of a jerk he'll be. So if you're running a collective campaign, you don't want jerks. You don't want jerks whether they're actually jerks or pretending to be jerks. Doesn't matter. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, in an individualist campaign, the players have implicitly agreed that it's every man for himself, and that they won't let treachery in the game make them angry out of game. But if one player behaves in such a way as to make it impossible for the other players to not be angry, then he has created the problem. For instance, imagine that in the last 6 campaigns, a hypothetical player named Bob has always played a sociopathic thug who always tries to kill the party when they're weak. And in the 7th campaign, the party members can hardly be blamed for murdering all of Bob's characters on sight. Bob might be in character in his treachery, and the party members acting totally out of character in dispatching this new person they've just met, but it's Bob who is the problem, not them. Choosing to play a psychopathic PC is like choosing to drive drunk. You made your choice, and the inevitable consequences are your fault. That's all for now. Next week, we're going to turn our attention to a different type of social problem that can occur, a problem in the relationship between the players and the game master. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons and leave a comment. If you didn't enjoy this video, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, but don't leave a comment. Either way, I'll see you next week.